Cindy Crow had her hand up next. Are you there, Cindy?
I mean, the experiences you're sharing are real.
Well, you know Ajahn
It's
Punadamo,
interesting to
right?
me.
You know Ajahn Punadamo, we should mention.
Yeah, he doesn't live far from me.
Yeah, because we've done videos together. We've done a whole series with Ajahn Punadamo, Panabasa, and I, the three of us. So Panabasa's friends. That's how we met, through Ajahn Punadamo's email list when we had him on in December on this same theme.
Is that right?
Yeah, so it's not too offensive. That's fine. You can talk to us.
It's so interesting. I was just thinking, like, it's so interesting how different my experiences are from yours. But yes, I know your experiences are real, but mine are so different. Like when you were talking about Bigfoot, we call him Sabe on the spaceship. I thought, well, yeah, because they're from the Sky Nation. But you're describing it differently than what we've experienced. So that was interesting, and other things like that. I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's similar to such and such, but it's different. The Anishinaabe culture is, I don't know, it's really different. Like I've had lots of experiences with lots of different beings from other dimensions, but it doesn't sound like that close to what your experiences are. So yeah, it's just really interesting to me. So I'm listening.
Well, Panabasa could talk about the Bigfoot, the Yaka. I mean, you want to comment on that, Panabasa?
Well, they do have them all over the world, including Burma, except in Burma, they're called the Ye, but they're big and they're hairy and they live in the forest and they smell bad and they're scary. And they're considered to be a ghost, a kind of ghost in Burma, however, and they can appear and disappear, which may, I mean, if like Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to call it really can do that, that would explain why they've never been caught. But also, yeah, but also I think they are liminal. I don't think that there's some biological species of, you know, sort of a humanoid ape or anything like that. Otherwise, they would have at least, you know, found DNA samples of them that have been, you know, scientifically proven beyond any controversy and so forth. So yeah, they'd be another liminal kind of being that is coming through the cracks in between the rules, I would say. At least that's my guess.
And those other beings you were talking about that can go through walls and things, I think you were saying. Yeah, we call them the little rock people. And same thing, they go through the stone to get inside the mountain. That's where they live. And they're able to just, you know, go through, and lots of people have seen it. So yeah, it's just interesting to me. Your experiences are similar yet different. So yeah, thank you.
Well, he could talk about Buddhist cosmology. There's all kinds of devas and ghost realm, all kinds of beings, right, Panabasa? It's not like there's any contradiction between Cindy's worldview and Buddhist cosmology.
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, like there's a list of psychic powers that one can attain through meditation, and one of them is just the ability to walk through solid matter, walk through walls, walk through mountains, you know, walk on water, swim through the earth, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and for us, it's usually initiated by a shamanic experience. For myself, it's usually the drumming that a woodpecker does, because it's like the drumming of a drum, and it initiates that experience. And yeah.
Well, I could ask you about the cracks in the universe that you mentioned, or the cracks in reality. The holographic universe is it's a theory going around in the UFO community. Now, I don't have a particular opinion on myself that the universe is a holograph or hologram or something like holographic universe, and that the evidence for this is that there are these cracks. There's lots of YouTube videos and PhDs discussing this. Are you familiar with that theory, the holographic universe, Panabasa?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've read a little bit about it, but I haven't studied it in depth. I got my own theories.
Okay. Oh, and Otto's got his hand up. Otto, do you want to turn on your camera?
I just wanted to just throw in something that I always thought was very interesting about the whole UFO phenomenon. And that is, it seems to have aspects that are very subjective to the person who's having the experience, as well as, with their culture and time. But at the same time, it leaves objective remains. There are, landing impressions. Other people witness these things. You have multiple witnesses and so forth. One of the things I've always found interesting about it is when, especially with the 19th century reports, and I brought this up before, I think probably in another talk, but always the UFOs, whatever you call them, the objects seem to be just a little in advance of what people had at the time. So at a time when they were already experimenting with airships and balloons, they were reported as airships, but they had much better performance than anything you could make. Then later on, I remember reading a report of someone who saw a hovering saucer over the road that had rivets in it, riveted plates, and then, at the turn of the last century. And now we have objects that, seem to be mimicking only at a much greater sophistication the stealth technologies that we're already working on. So it's almost like there's something here that is teasing us along. But on the other hand, it could simply be the fact that when we perceive these things, we are projecting our own idea of what a more advanced technology would look like, and it's limited by our own knowledge of technology. One of the things I noticed was, if you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, as I'm sure many people here have, you'll notice when the Enterprise is cruising, the sound is very much like that of a jet airliner. And that's because a jet airliner is the most sophisticated form of technology for flight that we know of. If you watch an old Flash Gordon serial, their spaceships sound like propeller-driven aircraft, because for them, a propeller-driven aircraft sound was the most sophisticated sound, and what someone associated with that. So it's almost like something's being presented to us, but in a way that we can grasp, sort of thing. So, and it's and the liminal aspect of that is, and that's been brought up a little bit tonight too. There are things that they call them high weirdness kind of encounters. I'm reminded of an event down in Pennsylvania where there was a very well documented UFO. There were several witnesses, but including a glow that was left in a field that state police observed. One state trooper said he could read a newspaper by the glow left by this object. But at the same time, this was associated with a Sasquatch sighting, as well as one of the witnesses apparently channeling and having encounters with large cats, large cat encounters, which you guys may have heard of, like mysterious large cats where there shouldn't be any. And as well as poltergeist phenomenon. And these are the sorts of things that traditional UFOologists, in the old days, they didn't want to hear about that. They want nuts and bolts saucers. If anything's too weird, they're going to say, well, he was traumatized by it, so he's just kind of imagining it. But so yeah, I just wanted to, if Pani Boss had any comments on that idea of, though, it's almost like something leading us along by a string, just a little outside of our technical abilities, almost like it's presenting it to us. Do you think that's something conscious on the part of something else, or is it something coming from inside of us?
So yeah, one interpretation would be like 2001: A Space Odyssey. You have the aliens that are trying to promote human intelligence and technology and so forth. But I do think that from a Buddhist point of view, anything that you encounter is going to be the fruition of karma. It's going to be, to some degree, a subconscious mental act. And so I do think that, if something is manifesting as a result of your own karma, then like your own individual beliefs are going to be a factor in, at the very least, like the fine details. Like it could be that what are called grays now were called elves in the Middle Ages, and they just appeared differently. They weren't wearing spacesuits. They look different.
Yeah, we're always limited by what we can think about. We can only think about certain things, according to our time and space. So if the time and space that we're inhabiting are karma, as you point out. So if something truly alien wants to communicate with us, and we've spoken before about how alien an alien life form would really be. I mean, we have trouble talking to dolphins, who are probably at least as intelligent as us, and yet they're our cousins. We've evolved on the same planet. We have the same biochemistry and everything. If we ran into something from another planet or another dimension or something, the ability to communicate, even to recognize that it was there, would be immense. So I would think they would have to communicate with us in a very imperfect way, by
Yeah.
trying to, create something that we could at least perceive, if not understand.
Yeah, I mean, I've read like how do you open up communications with an alien, like an alien craft, or like, let's say that astronomers find some planet that is emitting signs of intelligence, like radio waves or something. I mean, how do you communicate with them? And like the scientists just say, well, we start beaming them like a series of prime numbers or something, and if they can come up with the next number, at least you've started some kind of communication. But
You can assume is probably universal, but so
yeah,
that would be one way to start, if they even use language the way we do, though.
or numbers.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, their mindset could be very, very different. We are, of course, living in a time after the breakdown of the bicameral mind. You knew that was coming.
Yeah.
And, the theories of Professor Julian Jaynes posit the idea, of course, that we have a ruminative consciousness that is the result, in fact, an artifact of our language. If an alien civilization did not take that path, we might be facing a bicameral civilization, one which would not have the same kind of mental functionings that we do, wouldn't be so caught up in samsara. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I think there are beings. I mean, even Buddhism, which was originated in ancient India, like 500 BC. They admit that there are beings so different from us that they can be in the same room with us and we can't see each other. So I mean, it's they'd have to be sharing a lot of the kind of universe that we've devised for ourselves, or the kind of this version of reality. They'd have to be incorporated into that sufficiently that we could even see each other, probably. And then like I was saying earlier, like spirits and small g gods and so forth, they've got their own subtlety level of matter, so that usually a higher level can see someone on a lower level. But that's not necessarily true, because ghosts are at a lower level. And some of the evidence indicates that not only can most people not see ghosts, but most ghosts can't see people either. This is because they're in their own, they're sort of in their own world, their own version of reality. And there's sort of like some contact, a little bit of overlap maybe, where some people who are more liminal than others can see, what's, there or almost there, or, kind of right at the verge of being there. So, yeah. And I've forgotten exactly what the question was at this point.
Yeah, Otto, you can come back if you want to carry on, and then Jen's next. Any more, Otto?
Well, no, I think that I just wanted to bring that up, and I think Panibasa had some good insight on that, and that is an interesting point about the Devas not being visible to us
Unless they want to be.
Right, unless they want to be. But whereas we have to make an effort to be able to get ourselves into a state of consciousness where we'd be able to perceive them. And I've heard of this in other traditions too, where you have to prepare yourself in order to like have I use the word in its morally neutral sense, intercourse with higher beings. You can't just like walk up to them. There's fasting, prayer, meditation, things to which would basically alter your state of consciousness, because it's altering your body. So but I hadn't thought of that in relation to the complete alienness of something, but that is another aspect of alienness, just to having that whole other mind state and vibrational rate. So, but let somebody else talk for a while. Thank you, Panibasa.
You're welcome.
Okay, Jen, you got really good lighting there, Jen. Studio quality. Glad to have you here.
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess I hope I'm articulate enough in this, but I kind of want to touch on the topic that you guys were just discussing, and then call back to something that Panibasa, you had said about they're not necessarily ever being able to be proof of extraterrestrials. And I don't know if you are aware of the Ebens and how they're apparently allegedly helping the United States government and possibly the Russian government with their technology and those sorts of things. And I'm wondering, like, do you think it's possible through a Buddhist point of view that we can create the reality, we can open those windows and those doors and those cracks more and create a more physical reality for these beings to come into? Because if they're on a different level, if they're in a different dimension or whatever, and or a different vibration perhaps, can we create them more solidified and then have our proof? Do you think that's a possibility based on your teachings?
Well, going with the teachings of this book, The Trickster and the Paranormal, he's saying that, I mean, we need structure. I mean, too much chaos is dangerous. And so we've even created more rules and laws for human society than exist in nature. Just the laws of nature aren't really enough to keep things stable. We've got to have like taboos and moral codes and things that are just not allowed. And there would be punishments of people who would break these taboos in like earlier ages. Now it's becoming fashionable to break taboos, I guess. But the more you break the rules, the more open you are to not just what you want to come through the window, but any kind of chaotic force that can come through. You know, it's like, yeah, like if you're living in a jungle and you've got a wide open window, you don't know what's going to be coming through, you know. So there is a certain danger involved in deliberately trying to open up the liminal windows into like alternate realities. You know, there's all these stories of, you know, people, you know, summoning demons or whatever, and they're using all the rules that are necessary to make sure it can't run amok, and then they always forget something, and then it winds up running amok anyway. So, I mean, that is a danger. It's theoretically possible something like that could happen, that gradually through just changing our attitudes, we can start seeing unusual things as being more usual and sort of bring them into the realm of normality, something like that. Yeah, that is possible, I think. But I mean, there is a certain danger involved in trying to deliberately open windows into alternate versions of reality, because you can't be sure what's going to be coming through. And so the human race has kind of subjectively or subconsciously known about this. And people want things to be predictable, at least to some degree, and understandable to some degree, because it's scary when things start getting where you don't understand what's going on and it's unpredictable. I mean, people just instinctively don't like that. And so we've just every culture has tried to get things as stable as possible, you know, at least with regard to everything being predictable and following natural rules and so forth. And I think we've pretty much, like, the modern world is kind of done really well at that, just with science and technology. We've got so many rules through science, laws of physics and so forth, that, I mean, it's never going to be perfect and there's always going to be stuff slipping through. But yeah, it could be some kind of major crack could happen, and then who knows what would happen. But I do think that what you said is theoretically possible. I mean, there must be some way of just sort of standardizing certain liminal unusual states until they're no longer all that unusual. And then and that could be, it could be some kind of like technology. It could be like the next stage in like human like development, where we're leaving like materialistic science behind and starting to experiment with, you know, using mental states or, you know, like group mental states to sort of affect what is possible and what isn't possible.
Yeah, and like I'm picturing in my what I study and what I am involving in my life is like vibrations, right? So molecular vibrations and raising our consciousness to like the next level. You know, the dangerous word would be evolution, right? Like how we've come from like the Middle Ages, as you were talking about earlier, and you know, everything's made out of atoms, and so, you know, a rock vibrates at a certain frequency, and then an animal vibrates at another frequency, and then if we are actively trying to vibrate faster or higher, however it works, I'm not sure, but like I can picture some sort of an agreement between an extraterrestrial who might be vibrating on a higher level, wanting to help us or wanting us to come higher so that we can be better or something like that. I can picture some sort of an agreement happening, but I never really thought about that. Like, I'm picturing somebody using a Ouija board, letting the devil in, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's scary and dangerous. And I completely don't think that that's something that we should be wanting in our lives. But I definitely think that something's going on, and it's inevitable that something is going to happen. And I'm not really sure what that looks like yet, but I definitely see the fear side of it, and I personally hope for the positive side of it. You know, that pushing us, that leading us with the string that I think Brian was talking about earlier, about, you know, showing us what's possible and then us catching up with it, you know, vibrationally or physically, doesn't really matter. But yeah, I was just curious what your thoughts were on that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's like one of the it's like sort of the book of Revelation in the New Testament has the idea where we're going to mess things up so bad that it's just going to crack things wide open, and then it may be that you've got like even more higher evolved beings just come in and save us from ourselves, kind of a thing. So that's possible too. We might just accidentally blow the thing open wide enough that angels or gods or grays or whatever can just step in on a large scale and just like fix what we've broken.
Well, if that's the case, then that's in the hands of Russia and Ukraine at the moment. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I suppose so. Although from like the Buddhist point of view, there's a lot of talk like New Age and Hinduism and so forth. You know, they're talking about, you know, moving up into higher and higher levels, whereas in Theravada Buddhism especially, it's like all levels are samsara anyway, and so you can become enlightened just from the human level, and just essentially you're just sort of merging with ultimate reality instead of dealing with all of the different levels of like virtual reality. So that's one thing that when you were talking, it kind of reminded me of that progress can be nice, although it always brings its new problems. You know, it's like we're way more technologically advanced. We're way better off, especially with regard to medicine and so forth. You know, just 1,000 years ago, people didn't know what caused diseases, and they were using all kinds of weird, ridiculous cures to try to cure people. And now something that would wipe out an entire village, you know, you just take a pill and we're all better. But still, I mean, there's always, I wouldn't say that people are necessarily any happier than they were 1,000 years ago. It's just because there's just new problems that come up that replace the old problems. You get rid of one problem, it's just we have a need for there to be positive and negative. And to get into the more advanced levels, it's like you're just making it more subtle. There's less range. You're getting more towards just staying in a kind of a state of neutrality, where, you know, your people are more philosophical and wise. So good things don't have them overjoyed like they were before, and bad things don't bother them as much as before. And so, yeah, I'm kind of have mixed feelings towards the whole idea of the progress of the human race, because there's always going to be suffering. You know, it's the first noble truth of Buddhism. It might get more subtle, but then again, the happiness gets more subtle too. And so really, it's like wherever we are, you know, there's access to ultimate truth, and you can just bail out sideways out of the whole system instead of trying to get higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. But I think it might be inevitable that that's what we're going to be doing anyway. So I'm not really against it.
No, that's very insightful. I appreciate that's calming, if it were. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Jen, did you want to share your childhood experience in Nova Scotia with lights outside your bedroom window?
Oh, I don't know if anybody's super interested in that.
Well,
but,
we're an ET meetup group. Sure. Why don't you spend a few minutes on that? Get Panabassa's comment on it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I grew up in a small town, like 1,500 people, if that. And I had a cow field next to my house. And it was, I don't know, it must have been fall or winter. There was no cows in the fields at the time. And there was these lights that were coming across the field, and straight into my bedroom, and it terrified me. It scared the bejeebus out of me, and I didn't know what it was. And I called for my mom, and I was like, what is this, aliens, or what is this? I don't know what's happening. And it happened multiple times, like, I don't know, half a dozen at least. And my mom just kept insisting that it was coming from the road. It was coming from the road, it was cars. And it's not
Headlights or
possible. It's
something.
not possible. Yeah, there was no way, unless there was consistently a tractor or a car coming through the cow field, like a bumpy, like, this is Nova Scotia, this is not flat land, we don't live in the prairies. You know, the older I get and the more I think about it, because it never left me, it was probably extraterrestrials, because there was other things going on at the same time with my dreams and with my odd things happening in my home that just were not quite right. My parents always saying, oh, it's okay, it's just your dreams, it's just your imagination, you know, the typical fluff it off, because they're afraid too, I'm sure. But now, as my mom gets older, she's opening up more and more, so I'm actually kind of trying to gear up for the bravery to ask her again about what she thinks actually happened, now that you know, we're all older and wiser and more mature ish. But yeah, I don't think that there was a truck in those fields, you know, consistently for multiple nights. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, like in ancient Indian Buddhism, they considered like devas to appear as like just like bright lights. Like
Mhm.
you wouldn't be able to see their body. I mean, we weren't refined enough to see the outline or anything, but we just, you know, they were still sort of making it through into our version of reality somehow. So we'd see them as just bright lights, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
But
Would that be
yeah,
like an orb type of creature? Orb type of
possibly,
figure? Yeah.
yeah, possibly.
Interesting. Yeah.
Although it's hard to say. I mean, if it's just some sort of strange karma that you're spinning off, that yeah, it's. I mean, it could be just about anything, really. I mean, I don't know if you're ever going to get to the bottom of it and have like a concise
Yeah.
scientific explanation of what it was, because
Yeah.
anything's possible, really. I mean, the like Arthur C. Clarke used to say, it's like not only is the world stranger than we imagine, it's stranger than we are even able to imagine.
Yep. I believe that. I believe that for sure.
I think it's important to mention orbs because, like you said, Parabasa, in ancient India, Devas would be seen as lights. Like that's what an orb is. An orb is a spherical ball, and there's different colors, sizes, and shapes. I mean, people see a light, so that's what an orb is. So, yeah. So, is it a Deva, is it an alien, or is it both? I think one theory about orbs is some actually transform right into gray aliens right in front of people. They see an orb, and then bang, there's a gray in the room. So that grays might travel around in that way. So what were they seeing in ancient India? But orbs is it's a major phenomenon in ufology going back a century.
Yeah, I don't have any personal experience with orbs, so I can't really speak with any authority on them. Although, yeah, I mean, in the Buddhist suttas, it does describe it. You know, a deva comes to visit the Buddha, it just lights up the whole forest. You know, and then it manifests and, you know, stands before the Buddha and asks his questions or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess we move on to the next one, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't forget that we do have questions in the chat too that have been there for.
So I guess, Charles, this is your chance to step on the pages of history and enter the videos of the Preparing for ET Contact Meetup group. Do you want to turn on your camera there, Charles? It's good for our ratings. There he is.
Right.
Hi.
So I just wanted to comment about an experience I had once. You know, I've seen a UFO just once in my life. It was cool, and it was really fun to see. I was visiting my sister. She lives out in the country, middle of nowhere. And I was, you know, just hanging outside by myself underneath the night sky, enjoying the stars. And I saw something like kind of hovering, and it came to a complete stop, like the dead stop, just solely right where it was at. It's kind of cool. Wasn't making any noise whatsoever, and it took off fast as a bullet. I'd never seen anything move like that fast, not make any noise. It was cool. One of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I've told some people about it, and like they're like, don't believe me. It's like, well, it's because you didn't see it. If you'd seen it, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I saw it too. But I figured that was a cool experience I had that really did happen, and I figured I'd share that with the group.
Yeah, a lot of people have that kind of experience. I personally have never seen a UFO, although I have seen poltergeist phenomena and that sort of thing.
Hey, Charles, where are you? What state are you in?
The state I live in now is Washington, but I saw that in Colorado.
Okay, I thought you were in the South. You sound like a Southerner.
Oh, I've been all over the South, brother. I've been all over the U.S. I did see a couple fighter jets and a helicopter in the direction it had gone later that night, which is also kind of cool.
Yeah, that often happens. They're chase after UFOs. I know someone personally who saw in Costa Rica. It was what's that island off of Cuba? He saw jets chasing after a UFO. Puerto Rico, he saw jets chasing after. I did a video with this guy, so that's a phenomenon that often happens. UFO appears and the military is right there after them, probably to film them.
Yeah, well, they think it's some kind of bogey, probably. There's just something invading the airspace and they're going out just in case it's a Chinese plane or a Russian plane or something, probably.
I think they know better that it's alien. Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, Charles. Very good. Welcome to the meetup group. Yeah. And Katja is next. Katja's been on this before, so you're synced with us now, Katja. I called you earlier. So welcome, Katja.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. It's good to be here. I am going to take a look here. I had jotted down a few things about the things that I apologize, you guys. I have had just some unexpected things happening around in my household today. So I am so grateful. Well, not that kind, unfortunately. I'm just but no, I actually had a spiritual awakening about the comment earlier we were talking about with how you said that, perhaps in a past lifetime, there was a direct disciple or, there has been, past lifetimes that I've come into contact with myself where I was a shaman, where I have been in intergalactic or interdimensional forms through my spiritual awakening. My spiritual awakening was for love. I asked for empowerment. I asked for, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was at, I guess like the rock bottom of what it is to just be fed up with everything that was happening at that time. And also love was the biggest part of that, where you see things like that kind of unconditional love, the kind of force that you can, basically break the rules of the matrix with, like, those moments where mothers are saving their children with like extraordinary strength, the things that normally would be preventing us in that limited sense, where we are not limited. I truly believe that love is the gateway and it is the strongest force ever. Unconditional love and love of ourselves and, bringing that inward and not just the love of another, but we're here to experience in the physical, my interpretation through my awakening. My guides have called me a bodhisattva. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know where to go with that. I had been faced with past life regressions out of nowhere. I woke up basically, and I had been told that I am a very powerful being or an ancient being and this has come to me from the cracks of the earth, like an original spirit. I don't know how to describe it, but basically ones that have been called to wake up at this time, to remember who we are. And it's not about being better than anyone else. Enlightenment never means superiority. Actually, divinity is equality in my interpretation. That we are being called to remember who we are as ascended masters, as the deities, that spark of divinity, and interdimensional beings, where we are able to work with that wisdom without the blame, the shame, and the fear, and the lower vibrations of those things, where we are able to go into such as like a Christ consciousness, where we are that master, that we have all the tools that we need from within, that demons aren't Hollywood demons. Demons are these lower vibrational spirits. And, and I asked for empowerment, and I had a rite of passage, a past shamanic calling, perhaps, or maybe one from a future or another being that I have meshed with, or a deva, or however I had something happen where it was like a meshing of consciousness, and the wisdom to know the difference is the way that I've been explained. So I channel frequently. I've worked with other beings, other, channeling, like councils, different beings, but I believe that they're not separate. I guess my interpretation is that they're actually us, or parts of our consciousness, parts, or that we work with, parts of our soul, fragments that are coming back into wholeness through the unconditional love and mending those things and bringing those lower vibrational entities over to the light and receiving the wisdom that comes from that, right? And that is very shamanic. But perhaps that we were all meant to be shamans, and that we never were meant to not remember who we are. That reverence of life and spirit and ourselves in this world. I've been, noted that I'm a protector of existence for existence, a protector, a stewardess of the earth. Now, these demons being running amok or whatever, that's Hollywood demons. We were never meant to be afraid of shadow or darkness. It holds wisdom, it holds transformation, the light into the shadow, shadow into the light, balance, healing, restoration. I feel like everything that has happened is, when you mention karma, people get afraid. They think, like my name is Earl or something, right? Where it's like, you're running around and karma's going to get you or whatever. I don't look at it that way. I look at it like it's showing up with love to things so that we may learn the wisdom that comes from those things, not necessarily having to go through the suffering, the blame, the shame, the fear, the regret, the lower vibrational forces, where we can actually transmute those things and learn the lessons quicker. That's embodying free will. That's embodying, what it is to be our own spark of divinity, and that it is not us being better than anyone else, that every single person, no matter where you are, no matter what your skin color, no matter what your background, no matter what you believe, because I see the truths in all religions, where we're supposed to be coming together to, share this information with each other and these tools. And so by me coming into another place in the Amazon saying I'm a shaman, to not be looked at like, how could you be a shaman from the Western world? You're a white woman, you're a woman. I think these things are, these awakenings are happening because we're making contact from within, and we are also here remembering who we are so that we may share these stories of epic transformation, to remember that, and that no one is exempt. That, you could have had a past life as a powerful shamanic force, or, a future one where time isn't linear, where we are able to pull in all of this wisdom without blame, shame, and fear. And I chose to merge with the ultimate reality. I have had many different conversations with masters over time, or ones that I've resonated with my spiritual awakening for love and that particular consciousness. That's what it's been told to me. Now, this might be the work of other beings, I'm not sure, or other technologies, societal technologies that have been used for control over the matrix, different beings, reptilians, etc. But we were to remember that it's not about these beings being bad, or, I believe that there are beings, that it's yin and yang of all different kinds of beings of consciousness. And that when we sit here and we live in fear, we forget that we are powerful manifestors of our own reality, to create our own reality. Because like you said, it's not real, but what is our feelings, our interpretations, our experiences, how we feel, how we express love with one another, how we do it to ourselves. That's real. That's our consciousness. That's our soul. That's interpretation. And then everything else is moldable, malleable, adaptable, flexible. And then you have the whole, the hologram. I've had visions of a mothership being over our head that's disguised as the sky. I've had a resonance with Gaia, with, the earth, with Isis. for the empowerment of what it was to do soul retrieval. It was all very symbolic, you know. So these things all happened for me when I had an awakening for love. And then I learned how to turn that into myself. And now I channel, and now I realized I was a vulva in a past life, a seer, a shamanic, you know, a traveler, an empowered being. That does not mean that I'm not able to do that because of the color of my skin or my background, but that we've had many different lives over past lifetimes and future ones that are not bound by time, especially for love and allowing that information to flow and channel. So these are powerful things that I've been working with. But I choose, we can all choose, like the yin and the yang, right? And the balance and the tranquility of life. We can choose to create or destroy without blame, shame, or fear. You know, heaven on earth is not about, you know, exclusivity, like, oh, can't get into that because I've been messing up in my life or whatever. It's not
I
like
just want to
that.
interrupt. Did you want his feedback on this, like a Buddhist view
Yes,
on that?
I
or
had a lot to
question?
say. I have a whole list of things, and that's why I'm like, should I just leave it to the chat? Should I open my channeling gates? I resonate a lot with what he says already. I just wanted to add to it and also receive anything that you may interpret out of what I'm sharing with you.
All right. Well, going with just standard Buddhism, I mean, we've been here for an untellably long time, and we've been
Exactly.
pretty much everything. We've been in the heavens, we've been in hells, we've been
Yep.
pretty much everything you could be, male and female,
Yep.
and whatever.
Masculine and feminine.
Yeah. So I mean, that was one thing that I was thinking of when you were speaking. And with regard to love, I mean, I think the perfection of love would be enlightenment. It's more of a heart. I mean, there's in Buddhism, there's like two main paths you can take, which are ultimately the same path. One is the path of heart, which is more feminine. One is the path of wisdom, which is more head oriented and more masculine. But I mean, when you eradicate delusion, that's the same as eradicating suffering. It's just the same enlightenment.
Precisely.
And love is, my favorite definition of love is just acceptance. It's conscious acceptance. So like a fully enlightened being would be capable of just pure unconditional love, because there'd be no longer any me separate from everyone else. It's just, I mean, it'd be even beyond us. It's just like, you know, just the merging of consciousness with everybody. There's no longer any Pink Floyd's wall, no longer any separation or anything like that. So,
then,
I mean,
yeah,
the
if I
perfection
can
of
add
love
to that
is a
quickly.
spiritual
I'm sorry,
path.
before you go ahead, continue. I apologize. I just have to, I will forget potentially, but continue. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. Were you going to say something?
Yes, I wanted to ask you about this, and this has been something that I've been interpreting through my experience, but it was about the age of Aquarius and the eagle and condor regarding masculine and feminine energies, remembering that power to create. It can also be used to destroy. It's also been used for chaos energy. It's also been used for many different things, but we are also in a human condition. So where I have achieved, you know, being called a bodhisattva or potentially in a past life or future, or however you will look at that, or in this current, this time isn't linear outside of this construct or outside of this matter. The human condition is something that we will ultimately, sometimes we're not perfect beings here, that even in enlightenment or divinity, or that's remembering who we are, we will always have the human condition. Now, regarding Buddhism, is that something that, you know, even with unconditional love to the self and others and being able to come back to that, is that what it's really, is that the lesson? Is that what it's about? And remembering that every time, because you will have slips sometimes in that.
Well, I mean, the human condition is always going to be here, although, I mean, it's just samsara is eternal. So
Yes.
it's like some people are going to become enlightened and just sort of detach from the whole system. In Hinduism, you have like enlightened beings that are just coming back, just manifesting as living beings again. Although in Theravada Buddhism, it's just you just kind of merge, you know, you just sort of evaporate. You know, the spirit just sort of loses its cohesion, and you're just out of samsara. That's sort of the traditional Buddhist interpretation. Although in Hinduism especially, they do have, like, Neem Karoli Baba was supposedly fully enlightened, and he just keeps coming back again and again. sort of like the Dalai Lama or something, where you just sort of have this commitment that no matter what, you're just going to keep just kind of diving in and helping the beings that need help, you know.
And I wonder if that's what that came into me, because, or a past life of mine, or, you know, my own, you know, altered, like interdimensional being or form, or that spark of divinity, that higher self, so to speak, in self-actualization of realizing that we are that. And, you know, and that is where I've come from. And that is what I have been trying to basically, and then all the other wisdom that's flowing through me as a result of that. In that really powerful moment where I was asking for that wisdom and enlightenment and empowerment for something that I felt I needed to do, enacting free will for the purest intention, you know, and having that happen, and then now being left with all of these. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's making peace with it and letting it flow, but naturally, when that happens, especially coming from my background in this lifetime, you know, you kind of feel like you're grateful. You don't really fit in anywhere, but you fit in everywhere. Like I feel at home in any church, synagogue, mosque. I see the truths in all religions. I see it, you know, as it's very beautiful to me, existence, and I'm in love with existence. So, you know, to attain enlightenment does not necessarily mean that, you know, and then I think this is happening because I think beings are wanting us to remember who we are so that we can get the lens of separation out of there and remember that we are all connected anyway, regardless. And these beings are wanting us to remember that. Now, Buddhism has a very special place to me, and Taoism, and, you know, but anyone and everyone has the ability to tap into it, to completely transform their life, to heal themselves, to, you know, make connections to these other beings. And it's quite beautiful. I don't know if you had something to add to that, but these were my experiences.
Yeah, well, reality is always here all the time. We're like fishes swimming through it, but the fish has no concept of being wet just because there's nothing else to compare it with. So, I mean, that's kind of the way we are. And I don't think that, I mean, it's not so much a matter of we're all ultimately connected, is we're just all ultimately the same, because there's no separation. There's no separate things to connect really. Ultimately, at the highest level, it's all just one God or Tao, or you know, the Dharma Kaya, or there's all different kind of words for this, the ultimate principle. And
Yeah.
we're just sort of, as my favorite metaphor is, you know, just the block of marble, and this block of marble has every possible statue inside of it. You know, every molecule is already there in the right place. You just have to dismiss the extra rock, and that's kind of what we are. I mean, we're like these sort of conditional or virtual beings living inside this formless infinity. And ultimately, I mean, you take away the context and all the stories and everything, it's all just God or like, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the Eastern approach, is just, you know, there's this one formless ultimate reality, which is God or whatever, and just all the separateness and all the stories and the, you know, the miseries and, you know, all that kind of thing is it's virtually real, and it has to be there. It's never going to stop being there, just because, I mean, it's like that block of marble is always going to have every possible statue inside of it. There's nothing you can do to the statue or to the block of marble to stop there being an infinite number of like potential statues inside of it. It's just always going to be there. So we can detach from it, but we can't just make it stop.
So Rolf, you want to go next? Your camera's off. He's had his hand up for a while.
Well, since both the last two people spoke about,
Or your camera, Rolf. Or I think, there you go.
Since both people just mentioned a hologram, I'd like to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, Rolf knows a lot about holographs and holograms since the 1970s. He's a professional photographer and lots of things.
I just have like a sketchy understanding of how holograms work. It's like lasers going through Yeah, it's like there's like a mirror and lasers and something. I can't even remember exactly how a hologram is made, but I do know it's like every single little bit of the hologram contains the entire image.
Yes and no. That was a mistake. And everybody thinks this is a miracle, right? Because the emulsion part is put on a glass plate. And then by accident, it fell on the ground or got broken somehow. And then they found out, oh, the whole image is well, it's the same thing. You have a window in your house and you see what is outside, right? Now,
Sure, if you look outside the window.
you can also pull the blind down halfway. You can still see outside. You can make it to a tiny, tiny, tiny little hole, and you go right up to the hole, and you can still see all of the outside. So it's not a miracle. It's why does anybody come to the conclusion that now, since this hologram, well, it's amazing, right? You have a projecting hologram, you have a reflecting hologram. The one you have on your money or on your credit card, you hold it up to sunlight and you see a three-dimensional image, right? But it's an illusion. It's I mean, if you think reality is an illusion, a hologram very definitely is a super illusion. There is nothing real about it. You can put your hand through it. It's photons, reflected photons. That's all it is, right? So if you say the universe is a hologram, you know, I can almost go with you, because I would say, yes, and God is operating the projector. That's the only time, right? But any other idea is a stupid idea. It's actually disinformation. And nobody has used that name before 1970. So I'm thinking back of UFO with the rivets. Yeah, it's nothing new. I mean, it's you know, how you perceive, or have you understood what some people tell you now, that the universe is a hologram? It must have made some sense to you. How do you explain it?
It vaguely makes sense, but again, I don't really understand like the mechanics of a hologram well enough to really make a good what's the word, like a comparison. So
Well,
it's like I use my own ways of understanding things. So
well,
generally haven't used a hologram as a means of understanding the universe. Although when people say the universe is a hologram, I can kind of understand it, but not like really in depth understand it.
Yeah.
Does it mean a projection, Rolf? Is that mean our universe is a projection from another universe? Is that what they mean?
I'm not saying that. That was some people seem to think.
No, but I mean, what do they mean? Not what do you
no
mean? What do
idea.
they mean?
I think it's disinformation to sidetrack our thinking.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I'm
Universe is
inclined to
not
think
a
so too.
hologram. It's a stupid idea.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Besides, the mathematicians are still trying to prove that idea mathematically, and so far they haven't been able to. So it's a thing that shouldn't even be talked about, because it doesn't take us any further, right? A hologram, before the 1970s, we could project our slides pictures we'd taken with our camera, and now we project it. Well, actually projecting, you know, this goes way back to the 1600s already. Well, even probably earlier, because the Bedouins have found if there is a tiny hole in their tent, they can see the image projected upside down on the other side of their tent. Yes. The whole image came through a tiny, tiny crack in the weave or on whatever material you use. Yeah.
So you think there's disinfo, but disinformation is very common in the whole UFO field. The government wants to give us disinfo, like we're aware of that, and you've been around for a long time, right? So that's true within the UFO community. There's also charlatans as well as government disinfo. So we have lots of disinfo.
Yes, but when I have Linda Moulton Howe continuously still saying the universe is a hologram. Now, last time she said a projected hologram, right? Because there are two different ones. Just like you have, if you put slide film in your camera, you get slides. If you put print film in, you got a print. And so with the holograph, we have two types. And yes, usually before the laser, there was no hologram. And supposedly, we found the laser, guess from who? UFOs.
Oh, you mean the Roswell crash in 1947? They may have been back engineered it from that, you mean?
It's bullshit.
So how did we get it from then?
It's the same thing they say we also found the transistor. It's also bullshit. If those things were using those primitive transistors that we supposedly copied from their spaceship.
So laser, man managed to invent the laser by himself, you're saying? Mankind did that on their own.
Well, yes, the laser was invented by, I forget the guy's name. And the transistors the same. You want to see a picture? You can look it up. The first transistor. Now we have millions of transistors on a little chip. If that UFO that they found, which was only, let's go 50 years back, if they had used the transistors we are using now in your computer or wherever, your cell phone, you wouldn't know what to make of it, right?
Yeah, I think they've abandoned transistors altogether in favor of silicon chips now.
Yeah, it's which are produced by microscope. Projected image, right? It's a projected image.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why they compare the universe to a hologram is this idea that in the hologram, every piece contains the whole, supposedly. And it reminds me of there was a German philosopher, Leibniz, back in the 1600s, I think, who had this idea of monadology, where everything's made up of these tiny monads like atoms, and each monad contains the entire universe reflected into it, so that if the entire universe disappeared except for this one monad, I mean, it wouldn't make any difference to that monad because it would still be as though it were still functioning in the universe. And there's one school of Mahayana Buddhism that's like that, and it's Yogacara, where they're just subjective idealists, where they're saying that everything that you experience is your own karma. So it's just like a dream, and there could be nobody else in the entire universe, and it wouldn't make any difference because you'd still be imagining them, and it would be the same as if they were really there. I don't know what that has to do with space aliens, but I mean, there are people that believe that. I'm not so sure about it myself.
No, just forget the idea. But another idea that was interesting is the thing love. And of course, if you go to your marriage counselor, he always tell you, well, you should occasionally at least mention to your partner that you love them. But that is totally meaningless. First of all, it's meaningless to you if you say it, and it's probably also meaningless to the other person that receives it, because it's because you say it because somebody told you that's a good thing to do, right?
Yeah, it should be like the Bible, where it says, that speech is the overflow of the heart. So you say it because your heart is full of it and it's overflowing out your mouth.
That is what real love is. when
Yeah.
it comes from within. Yes. And it's
And one of the greatest blessings you can give anybody is just to know them, see them at their worst, know all their faults, and just love them full blast anyway.
yes, because going right back, we are all the same, actually,
Yeah.
right? But here we have to work out and work on different problems. Each
And
one.
the person you
each
live
one-
with is your main teacher. They're the one that's giving you stuff to work on.
One would think, one would hope so, you know?
Yeah.
But can you
Yeah.
comment, Panabas, on us being all the same? Like Buddhism doesn't agree with equality. Remember, one of your great jokes was there's no equality between the 31 planes of existence in Buddhist cosmology, human to hell and David. Like we're not all equal from a Buddhist view because of
in
karma, the law of
samsara.
karma.
From a samsaric point of view, we're not all equal. But I mean, it's the same ultimate reality underlying everything. So that, I mean, at the ultimate level, we're equal because we're essentially, you know, it's the same reality underlying all of us. But
Yeah.
I mean, when you get to this samsara and the 31 planes of existence and so forth, then obviously you're better off in heaven than in hell. You know, I mean, so
Yeah, I think of karma and rebirth. Like we are responsible for our personal karma for the past, and we're going to experience it in the future. From that perspective, we're not all equal. Some people are more ethical and been ethical in past lives, and other people are more unethical, and they're going to experience different outcomes. Correct?
Well,
yeah.
that is
And some
pretty-
people just have strange karma and have strange experiences that are real experiences, at least at the conventional worldly level. But still, it's because people's karma are different. Then to some degree, people's experiences are going to be like radically different. You know, some people can see spirits, or they have interactions with certain kinds of beings that, you know, just aren't acknowledged by science, and some people don't. And it's just largely just a matter of just subjective personality differences that make some things possible. And for some people and other people, they just don't have an open mind or open subconscious mind towards that sort of thing.
And also in Buddhism, we don't have the idea of forgiveness, that your sins or your bad karma will be washed away by a personal being, or God is going to forgive you, because there's no personal God in the universe that's going to forgive you. So that's a big difference, don't you think, in the Buddhist worldview?
Yeah, there's still an idea of forgiveness. It's just that if someone does something bad to you, you should forgive them.
Yeah. But you're not forgiven for your bad karma from the past.
No.
It doesn't
No,
make
that
any
has to
difference.
be
Forgiveness
worked
doesn't make
out.
any difference, right?
Yeah, that has to take its course.
because if you don't forgive them, that means you present yourself as a judge.
Yeah, and then you have like aversion, which is just making more karma, so that you're just going to have to keep dealing with the same sort of situation until you learn to accept it. The two things that we have to deal with the most are the things we love and the things we hate. You know, the things we have attachment, or I shouldn't say love, it's the things we have attachment for and the things we have aversion for, because we haven't learned to deal with that wisely yet. And so it just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up like a Groundhog Day until finally we learn to get it right.
Yeah, you know, that all sounds so simple. And yet, how many millions of people are we? Billions, 8 billions now, close to 8 billions.
Something like
And
that.
yet,
Over 8
yet-
billion.
and yet, it's just like every grain on the beach. They all look the same, and none is exactly the same as the other, just like with snowflakes. Right? We can see certain traits in certain people, but that doesn't tell us very much, actually, about that person.
Yeah, like you don't know all their past lives. But the point I was making about forgiveness for ourselves, we in Buddhism, we don't have a God that's going to forgive us. Like our past actions, forgiveness is not really relevant to our own personal karma. Like Panabasa says, our karma has to be played out. There's no God that's going to wipe away our sins and forgive us.
Yeah.
Oh,
Although
that's a big
forgive
difference.
ourselves. Definitely. I mean, some people can just send themselves to hell just because they just can't forgive themselves. And it might be something completely ridiculous. Let's say you've got like some really strict Jewish person who eats apple pie at his friend's house and then finds out that the apple pie had lard in it. And now all of a sudden he's committed a crime against God, and he's just like hating himself for the rest of his life, just beating himself. He's feeling remorse and guilt for the rest of his life just because he ate a piece of apple pie. And I mean, that kind of thing can just completely derail you and just send you into a hell realm. Just even though you haven't necessarily done anything wrong, it's just you haven't forgiven yourself, or you haven't, you know, you're just still clinging to this one thing, which is just still spinning off more karma.
Well, that's fair enough. But I'm thinking of, say, Christians on Sunday, you know, they get forgiven, and then they go back and cheat people all week, and they get back and they get forgiven. This doesn't work from a Buddhist view. No one's forgiving you. You're still responsible for your karma. Like, there's no getting away from this from a Buddhist view. That's what I'm getting at.
I think you have to make a distinction between Catholics and the others, and Protestants maybe. You're not forgiven your sin every Sunday you go. In a Catholic church, you have to confess your sins. You do that whenever the time comes. I don't know. You know.
But with Protestants, isn't the same thing that God can wash away your sins, or you can be saved? And
I never experienced that actually.
what about the idea that if you believe in Jesus, your sins will be forgiven, you'll go to heaven? We don't have that concept in Buddhism. It's not about believing in the Buddha.
I wasn't indoctrinated to that extent because we never actually went to church.
I'm just saying this is the Christian view. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about the Christian view, whether it's Protestant or Catholic.
Yeah, there are so many denominations. I mean, more than Buddhism. I think it goes into the hundreds, right?
Yeah, but still, it's a widespread Christian view that if your sins will be forgiven if you believe in Jesus, and this is not true from a Buddhist view. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, it's possible if that's what you believe. Hey, wouldn't it be nice if it were true?
What was true?
But you know, I had a strange experience actually. In the end, it doesn't matter who you are or who you were, what religion you belong to. You end up at the same place.
No, Panabas can answer that. You end up where your karma delivers you.
What you say.
No, this is the Buddha. Panabasa, would you like to answer? He was a monk for 30 years. Would you like to answer that, Panabasa?
I do think that there potentially have been enlightened beings in just about any kind of belief system, because it's not so much what you believe, it's just sort of detaching from the whole clinging to these ideas. So I think like St. John of the Cross was a Roman Catholic monk, but I think he may have been fully enlightened. I think there have been quite a few enlightened Hindus, enlightened Mahayana Buddhists, probably enlightened Christians, maybe some enlightened Muslims even. You know, it's like if you just got the talent, you've got the wisdom, and you just happen to be born in a culture that, you know, just may not have a very advanced religious system in certain ways, you're just gonna, I mean, still your talent's gonna take you there, or your parami, using Buddhist terminology, you know, just your own wisdom is just gonna rise you above just the standard, you know, the silliness that's going on.
Okay, you're a good diplomat, Panabasa. You're very good.
Yeah, well, I don't believe that, you know, only a Theravada Buddhist can possibly become enlightened. I mean,
I don't believe that either.
Advantages.
I'm just talking about how the law of karma works. It's straightforward. How after you die, how some people go down, some people go sideways, some people go up. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. So, I mean, there still are questions in the chat that have not been addressed yet, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, let's see. Well, Charles said that was the Pantheon, and let's see here. Well, Katch has got several questions in the chat, but she's right here. Deed says, in regards to Panel's block of marble, a quote by Antoine Saint-Exupéry, a designer knows he has achieved perfection, not when there is nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Thank you, Deed.
My father used to say that about wood carving. He said wood carving was much easier than drawing because you're just taking stuff away instead of adding anything.
Okay.
Then way up towards the top, Diane asked a question.
Oh, go ahead. You want to read it?
Okay. At 6:47, which was quite a while ago, Diane asked, is there any research on people who have been contacted and do they have any commonality? And she says her mic is not working. So I
Oh,
think
yes.
you would know the answer to that better than I would. Maybe you should
Yeah,
answer
actually, this research by Conscious Contact Research Institute, it's the most widespread and recent scientific investigation of questionnaires to 4,300 people, like questionnaires of over 600 questions each about their actual contact experiences. So the answer is yes. And part of the answer is about 85% reported positive experiences. And if asked, if you could stop these experiences, would you do it? About 80% said no, they wouldn't stop it. So this contradicts the belief in the world and the UFO community that these experiences are so negative when 85% said they have positive experiences. So look at CCRI, Conscious Contact Research. And so they have several books. One's called The Mind of God, and this one, Greater Reality. And their director, I'm going to have him back on soon. He asked me to contact him soon, Ray Hernandez. So they have about 15 PhDs involved in this study. So it's they put a lot of work into this, and it's the most current widespread scientific studies of contactees. So there you go, Dan. Hope you're watching this video later.
Yeah. Also, according to this book that I keep mentioning and trying to show to people,
Yeah, I think it's better if it's closer to your face, like closer to you, you can see it.
Yeah, by George P. Hansen. I mean, I think he has, I mean, they've been analyzing certain data and just coming up with certain personality traits that, you know, like alien abductees tend to have in common and so forth. And they do tend to be like liminal sort of people. And they're also more likely to have other paranormal kind of experiences. So I don't think that like a person who's been abducted by aliens had like an experience like that. I mean, you might have a few just complete normies, but that maybe deep down aren't as normy as they appear at the surface. But then like other people, you know, they tend to be more liminal kind of people. If I remember the book correctly. The book
That's true. That's definitely true of contactees. They're definitely more liminal. Also, they tend to have more psychic type experiences. I should also mention, at least my view on the Federation of Planets and the gray aliens is their intention is to be liminal. Like you said, they're not landing on the White House lawn, and this is an extremely widespread, extremely covert operation. It seems all over the world. They're picking people up in real time for a few hours, putting them back. Very common experiences, but they're trying to be liminal in the sense that they're being secretive. They're being covert about this. And I think at least what my wish indicates over the next centuries, they want to remain in the background and they're transforming or changing humanity. But liminal is it. They don't want to be front row and center. They basically, I think they don't want to shock humanity. They want to do it gradually behind the scenes.
Okay. So I think
Katja's got her hand up. Is there any more in the chat there that we missed?
no, I think that was, I was just gonna say, I think that looks like all of the questions in the chat.
Okay, Katja, you're up next.
Hi. Okay, yes, I will add. I was going to ask you regarding your comment on the how we are all the same. I feel that in my interpretation that where we are all connected, but still unique points of attention is something that came to me. Now, I understand that, like, other than the mind, you know, our souls and everything that is compounded within I look at it like it's that God is that carrying factor that is all of us and our soul and our wholeness through our soul, and that there's still the unique points of attentions and the experiences and all of the wisdom that's still in there, and that there's the cosmic consciousness in which you can pull from, so nothing is truly ours in terms of thoughts. That could be telepathy in terms of, you know, or a lower vibrational being or entity or frequency that we've come into contact with, and being a vessel or a conduit, and choosing what we are going to entertain of that experience or interpret or communicate with. So regarding like artists such as myself, musicians and things of that nature. I feel that anyone can manifest a talent because it can be pulled from that cosmic consciousness in record-breaking time. So it's not about, you know, because time is an illusion. So it's not about whether you have or you don't, it's whether you will it or you won't. You can access those points in which you can pull that in through your heart coherence with your mind. That's homeostasis, heart coherence in the mind. And the heart's a receiver. So the heart directly links you to that God consciousness or our soul, where everything is connected. So you can pull anything through that portal, so to speak. Is that not correct?
Well, I think just about anything is possible. I mean, there's always this infinite knowledge and wisdom is just all around us.
Right.
But I think most people, we're just not very good at like operating in samsara. It's like we're not very good drivers of our vehicle. And so we just get locked into these beliefs, especially like in modern, just throughout the history of the human race, we've been locked into belief systems. Nowadays, it's like scientific materialism, although that's kind of changing. And now you've got like progressivism and postmodernism and that sort of thing that's kind of getting a lot of people even away from scientific materialism. But I mean, most people, they have to have this belief system that they cling to, and it helps to create stability and predictability and non-scariness in our reality. But it also just causes us to be stuck in what we consider to be possible. And so there's all these possibilities that we don't really have access to just because we believe we don't have access to them, or we just can't. I mean, some people are just clueless. They just accept what they're told. I think most people, you know, like the NPC type of person, they just believe what their culture, like the mass media and all that, tells them is real, and they just believe it without question. And it doesn't even occur to them that they can just, you know, overnight be a maestro at playing the piano or whatever it is, when really, I mean, it is possible. It's just that it's hard for people to believe that it's possible. And that's one thing I was talking to Brian about in a video we did on channeling. It's that I think a lot of channelers, I got this idea from Mary Baker Eddy, of all people, that, I mean, there are spirits in this world, but as a general rule, they've got their own lives to live and they don't pay much attention to us. So in a lot of cases, a channeler is a person that they have access to this wisdom, but they can't believe it. They're too humble, or they're too limited in their point of view. And so they think, to their subconscious mind just sort of uses as a gimmick this being that they channel, when really it's just like a figment of their subconscious imagination. That, I mean, they have access to the information, but their conscious mind cannot believe that they have access. And so they have to use this indirect method, or like using tarot cards or something like that also. I mean, it's the person that's using it, it's their talent, it's their access to information. The cards themselves are just like a crutch. It's like
Absolutely.
a gimmick.
It's the truth. We have all the tools we need from within. So while they might be, exactly, it might be for the show of it, or maybe, but the power is behind the wielder. It's the power to heal through imagination, or to make these connections through those places, right? It's the wielder. And in what you believe of yourself and what you're able to accomplish. And yes, like the herd, like you're saying, but to have compassion to those, and to provide guidance to them for what they're experiencing when they're going through a spiritual awakening or an expansion of consciousness, and that wisdom can come from anyone, even in a fraction of a 2-year time frame. I feel like I have wisdom of several lifetimes, and that's not normal, or normie stuff of normies. So me channeling, or me coming into contact with those things, I've been very grateful ever since that's happened. And I felt it was all about love. So to reunite people again, instead of us looking at each other through the lens of separation. And so that my comment then is that, we are all, yes, unique points of attention with all these different experiences, where I have had, powerful Viking like lives, or, I just asked for that. So I guess I just came into that balance of what it was to remember my masculine and feminine experiences, or in like you said, that's symbolic to the mind or the heart and the power of those things, and to remember that women could be Freemasons. You know what I mean? I saw that and I was like, women can't be part of Freemasonry, you know, and I feel like this is a big thing where women have been looked at like they are not able to hold that kind of wisdom or empowerment. And that's just not, it's not the case. I don't know. Didn't know if you had anything to comment to that, but gender is an
Compared to
illusion.
women, I think this sort of the tendency is women have one kind of wisdom and men have another kind, just as a general tendency, you know, like men as a general tendency are taller than women, you know, but then again, you've got a lot of women that are way taller than some men. So it's just sort of a general tendency. But there's an old saying that men progress from prayer to love and women progress from love to prayer, which means it's like the man starts off mainly in his head and then has to cultivate his heart, whereas women mainly start in their heart and have to cultivate the head, sort of thing. So I think there are some systems that are more just sort of masculine in their approach to things, you know, more head oriented, and they may you know, some of the conservative types, you know, they don't want and too much heart stuff getting mixed in with it, or vice versa in other systems. Like Theravada Buddhism is just one of the most masculine, just head oriented systems known to the human race. You know, it's probably more like patriarchal or what do you call it, male centric than Islam, just because it was devised by men, celibate men who are like forest dwelling hermit ascetics that just avoided women like the plague, you know. And so it's just a very head oriented philosophical kind of system. And then now that it's gotten into the West, maybe that most teachers of Theravada Buddhism in the West nowadays are female, and they're this, you know, the more of the compassion stuff and less of the, you know, the conceptual wisdom stuff. And in a way it does kind of muddy the waters of an old tradition, but I mean, it's just,
But like you said about the rules being there to be broken, or to let fear, take fear out of it, and open your mind or your heart up to the infinite of unlimited possibilities of quantum. There's quantum, you know, understanding in that as well, is that there are millions upon billions upon trillions of possibilities, and you can bring in any one of them with a pure intention, and having yourself clear to receive that, or willing to receive that, or to believe that.
Yeah, I think the problem is that for every one person that's got the pure intentions, you've got, you know, at least 100 people with like the muddy kind of crappy kind of intentions, and that kind of messes things up. So as you have the problem of, like, in Buddhism, because I mean, I speak from a Buddhist point of view, you have like the Theravadan conservatives who are trying to stay as close to what the historical Buddha taught as they can and not add anything new to it. And then they just wind up being dogmatists, just parroting words out of books. Whereas then you've got, I mean, not all of them, I mean, but there's a lot of just dogmatism, like especially in a country like Burma, where if you don't say it exactly the way it is in the book, you've said it wrong. And then you've got like the Mahayana types, where, I mean, they were put more emphasis on just personal inspiration, and they just went all over the map, you know, everything from the ridiculous to the sublime. And then you have to use your own wisdom to kind of, you know, find the gold in the slag heap there. But I mean, it's always a dilemma. I mean, we're human, and there's always going to be this sort of muddy waters to wade through, and, you know, we do the best we can. And I really do not think that any UFO is ever going to land on the White House lawn.
No, definitely, probably not. But I feel like as far as UFOs, these contacts, like we were saying before, I feel like they're happening from within. You know, if you think about it, and they can materialize if they choose to, or these beings, or us, or however you look at that. But I truly believe, no, I feel it, that there are many different beings, and that we're all a part of it in different dimensions or in different futures or in different star systems as part of our soul and our awakening and our understanding to expand our consciousness in that way. So I just don't live in fear. I don't know if you've noticed, through my spiritual awakening, I was in a public hotel with the door open. I was not there with the door shut. This is through my spiritual awakening. I had my door open in the middle of the night, kept it open. Don't ask me why I did that. I was traveling alone. I felt like I was not alone. I felt like I've never been alone, and that we've had constant beings surrounding us at any given time, guides, other places of time and space, other watchers or observers, or that we can become our own so that we can create our own reality. So that I let fear go out the window. So a woman traveling alone, I'm not afraid. I'm not a fool either, but I don't live in fear. And I'm the exact type of person who wants to throw myself into the unlimited unknown and see what I come back with. So I don't know. I just thought I'd add that as just a funny thing to have my door open in a public hotel, traveling alone during all of that. So fear went out the window.
Bass, I could ask you about, I know I read in the Hindu teachings, I think they say there's on 400,000 planets, there's humans or humanoids. And I'm just wondering, in Buddhism, did the Buddha talk about the human realm being, across the universe on other places in the universe, or like other planets?
Yeah, in ancient India, they just assumed that, this universe is here for humans, pretty much. It's very human centric, pretty much. Any kind of ancient system, like the Bible has the world with humans on it being the center of the universe. All the stars were put there just to help sailors navigate at night and so forth. With regard to ancient India, they had a wider view than that. They had all the just infinite number of worlds out there, but still they really couldn't imagine beings with tentacles breathing liquid methane or anything like that. So I think it was partly just limitation in their imagination, where they've got just essentially humans and humanoids populating the entire cosmos.
Okay, so the Buddha is basically saying humans are on planets all over the place, right?
Well, either the Buddha is saying it, or just ancient Indian cosmology was saying it, and he was just a member of ancient Indian culture.
But I guess the Theravada or the Buddha rubber stamped that. He confirmed that in terms of his own cosmos, like the 5 realms of existence, right? And the human realm being more than just planet Earth, right?
I'm not exactly sure if the historical Gautama Buddha was really discussing that, because the oldest text, he's just saying, don't believe anything. Don't cling to any point of view. Just, you're going for the ultimate. You leave the samsaric details behind. You just go for the ultimate. And but relatively soon in the evolution of Buddhism, just Indian cosmology got incorporated in. If it wasn't incorporated already, to some degree it had to be incorporated already. But yeah, it is true that early Buddhism does have like a anthropocentric attitude towards the universe, like just about any other ancient religion.
Yeah, I'm talking about the whole Pali Sutras, right? The Middle Lake Discourses, long, just the whole 6,000 pages, not just this early text, like the Theravada, that cosmology of the whole text. The human realm is all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like this universe is destroyed and a new universe evolves, and it's just a new Earth with new humans. It just continues endlessly. It's an eternal cycle of, the universe expands and contracts and is destroyed and is respawns and expands and contracts and destroyed. And there's always human beings. And there's not a lot of details on what's going on in other world systems other than our own, but the implication is that it's pretty much the same system throughout the entire universe, where you've got, the same 31 levels of existence and human beings speaking Pali, So
speaking Pali.
yeah. That's just the way it is. A zillion gajillion years ago, people were still speaking, human beings in India speaking Pali.
Okay, I guess that's Indian centric look at the world.
Yeah, essentially. And it's people are products of their culture and they're limited by their culture. You can't think things that are just completely alien to anything you've ever thought before, unless you're just really, a liminal kind of a person. You've taken drugs or something, but they're just a product of their culture. And it's, that's why Star Trek, though entertaining, is still pretty lame, just because, just the limitation of the imagination of the writers, who really couldn't do alien worlds much justice. And so they just put human beings who look like human beings and speak English with an American accent all through the universe.
Yeah, they had a budget about $100,000 per show too back in the 60s.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about telepathy. It's in the title of your talk today. Do you want to comment on telepathy?
Well, it's certainly possible. And there's different kinds of it. One kind of telepathy is you just have kind of a group mind going. You're close with another person, you have your barriers down, and you're just both thinking the same thoughts. That happens with my sweetheart a lot, where she'll be thinking something and then it comes out my mouth, and then she's like kind of weirded out by it or something. But it's just if two people like love each other, then there's like a third being is formed, which is just the combination of the two. It's like the us being. And usually, when we're in that mode, then that's when I'll be saying what she's thinking or something. So that's one kind of telepathy. But I think there's probably other kinds, like actual mind reading, like is described in the Pali text, is one of the psychic powers that a person can get through intensive meditation, where you're just looking into the other person's mind and seeing what they're thinking. It's not just synchronicity, where I'm not deliberately saying what another person is thinking. I'll just say it, but because we're in kind of us mode, then there's like a sharing of minds. It's kind of the blending together, and so we tend to be like thinking similar things or the same thing or something.
It's also one of the I guess magical powers that the Buddha listed. Like he had that, and some some could do that, right? Telepathy or reading people's minds.
Yeah, in fact, that's the only psychic power that a monk is supposed to use in the presence of lay people, is just to look into their mind to see what the best way of teaching them would be.
But what's important as it relates to ufology and a hallmark, it seems, if all the aliens, is they use telepathy with each other and they can communicate with human beings with telepathy. Like the most common alien seen is the gray type, like in the encounter experience. And almost everyone reports telepathy being used. They're, the grays aren't speaking to them with words out of their mouth. They're receiving telepathic messages, and that the gray society, their whole culture and society, is one of telepathy. So it indicates more of sort of a communal, sort of collective type thinking. Like human beings, we don't have telepathy, so we keep dark secrets from each other. We're polite on the outside, but people hate you on the inside, kind of thing. So it seems the benefit of these telepathic societies is that they're open and honest that way. They have this kind of more collective mind. But yeah, but in terms of the talk today, what's significant about telepathy is it's a hallmark of the ET relationship with humans and with each other.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it's possible. And like a higher, wiser being probably could just get into the group mind mode with other beings. Because the consciousness is all like connected anyway. So
yeah.
If they're aware of that, then probably they can manipulate that or use that.
Yeah. Well, before I bring Otto in, I want to mention in the suttas, the Buddha talks about like a Brahma of 1,000 worlds. He can encompass all the beings within 1,000 world systems. Does that mean telepathically the Brahma can actually, there's a Brahma right now that can read all of our thoughts, that kind of encompasses our mind? Is that what that means?
I'm not sure exactly what the implication would be. I don't think he would be like hearing everybody's thoughts all at the same time, but some worldling, if he wanted to know their thoughts, I'm sure he could, if he wanted to.
Yeah, so this Brahma is a vast being. Like I know in the Vedic teachings or in Hinduism, they talk about the higher self. Well, we don't have that in Buddhism. But what if they mean like, is your higher self this Brahma? Like if you're part of it, right? You're part of it and you have some connection and there is no self. Could in a sense, we be part of that Brahma, you know what I mean? By if the Brahma encompasses 1,000 world systems, is that what a Hindu might call a higher self?
I don't think so. I don't think it works that way.
Yeah, what's your interpretation? How does that, what's going on with that?
With the Brahma, you mean?
Yeah, like your relationship with that Brahma, if the Brahma encompasses the beings of 1,000 world systems.
Well, I mean, he just can see he can just know what you're thinking or feeling or whatever. I mean, it's like a human being is more advanced than a dog. And sometimes you can just observe the dog and know when it's going to start barking, or you know when it's going to pee on the floor or something, just from observing subtle signs. And then you just, you act accordingly. And the dog might think, wow, if you had enough intelligence, it's like, wow, how do you know I was going to do that? But I mean, it's just obvious too. I mean, you have a certain sensitivity, and I think a Brahma would have way more sensitivity than a human. And they just, to the extent that they'd know what we're thinking and what we are feeling and so forth, without us necessarily being part of the same being.
Yeah, but if a human, say a human's very advanced or in jhana state, you're meant to already up there in the Brahma realm, right? Like it could, or enlightened human connect with that Brahma, like the Buddha could talk to Brahmas, right?
Well, you could probably communicate or something, but I don't know to what extent there'd be like a merging of consciousness or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks.
So, I mean, to some degree, we're just dealing with hypotheticals,
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing this all my Buddhist life. I thought maybe I've been wasting my time. Maybe I should just deal with my unwholesome thoughts and stuff. But anyways, Otto, join us, Otto. You're on next.
All right. Can you hear me?
Otto in New York State.
Okay. Can you hear me? Test, test.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, good. I got my earbuds on, so hopefully this will work a little bit.
Good, man. Thank you.
No, hey, I'm doing my best. I wanted to bring up the aspect of time, especially when it comes to what you might call psychic powers. Sometimes this includes things like precognition, knowing that something's going to happen, or just having a feeling. And I don't know, time itself, and we kind of talked about this before, we always have a geographical metaphor for time, like it's a physical distance to be traversed. We have a calendar. It's like a map of a series of rooms through which we pass. Each room has a door that opens only once, only in one direction. And yet, if you accept that metaphor as some sort of a geographical distance, and we have to walk through it, the implication is that there is a perspective from which you can see the entire area that we're traversing, and the calendar is sort of like an idea of that. But there could be connections between the rooms, if you like, intercoms or something. It just seems that sometimes these powers have to do with transcending time and space. And I think it was in The Trickster and the Paranormal. Didn't he talk about, it's been a bit while since I didn't reread it, but wasn't there a thing where they were doing an experiment with somebody trying to get so many people to walk through a door? And one of the ways they did a double blind was that rather than actually having them in another room, they actually filmed what had happened like the week before, and then presented them with the film, and they were able to actually, show a statistically significant number of quote unquote hits. And yet the film had been taken days before. So this seems to show that there is a transcendence of time and space. With that in mind, maybe some of these psychic powers are simply super synchronicities, and a sage could be someone. Remember when Neem Karoli Baba was on the train, the famous train story, where the train just happened to stop, and just happened to start again at these times, and he was completely in tune with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that just occurred to me because you mentioned synchronicities, which I think, that, and there's the wonderful happy cat, I see it. But yeah, how synchronicities could be a way of basically transcending time space, maybe like the intercom system between the rooms, to stretch that metaphor to probably the breaking point. But what do you think? What do you think of synchronicities? How do you view them?
Synchronicities?
Yeah.
Well, I think Jung himself identified synchronicities as meaningful coincidences.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, they do happen more if you're like doing intensive meditation practice or you're more of a liminal being, I think. Just, and I do think that like an enlightened being like Neem Karoli Baba, I don't think that he's using willpower to do miracles. I think they're just spontaneously occurring around him just because he's such a window of liminality in this world that just about anything can happen through him. I think a lot of
Almost like a lens.
yeah, or a mirror to some degree. Like Ram Dass used to say that the better you knew Maharaji, the more you realize that there really was nobody there. He was just like a mirror reflecting your own karma back at you.
Wow.
And just if you had weird karma, then he'd do weird things.
I have heard a few weird stories.
Yeah. But I do think that synchronicity is like just spontaneously without planning anything, it just happens, is probably
Right.
the way a spiritual person is doing miracles. It's not like a coven of witches that are using deliberate power of will to make something happen. I think
Right.
he's just going with the flow, and weird stuff just starts happening, and he's just he's fine with it. It's just
Right.
coming.
Action as opposed to motion is what I think Aristotle would say. When you're trying to direct something, it's action, but motion is just when it's naturally arising and occurring.
Yeah,
It's like
or
there's
like what the
motion to
Tao
the
Te
ocean.
Ching calls non-action, Wu Wei.
I always translated that as doing nothing effectively.
Yeah.
Well, that was my 2.5 cents.
It was well worth 2.5 cents too, I might add.
I thought a
Thank you,
bargain at the
Otto.
price. You are welcome, Brian. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Otto's got videos with me and videos with Panabasa. Actually,
We need to
Panabasa.
do another one.
Yeah, we should.
do another one soon. Yeah.
Yeah, we should. We should tell the audience, Panabasa, how they can find you. A YouTube channel, Bitchute channel, website. You want to give that info? Because sometimes I have radio shows that they only hear the audio. You can also put it below this video as well.
Yeah, there should be at least 1 or 2 links on the video. And just a second here. I'm trying to make sure I'm telling the right name for my channel. Okay, it's Panyo Basa, aka David Reynolds, is the name of my channel.
That's YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, YouTube. And Politically Incorrect Dharma, I think, is the Bitchute channel. And then I've got a blog, which is Politically Incorrect Dharma at blogspot.com.
When did you start your writing, like on your website? How long? Because you and I met 4 years ago in 2019. April next month is our anniversary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was April the 19th, 2017 or
So
19.
when did I start writing? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. When did you start writing your blogs? How long ago was that?
Oh, that was like maybe less than a year after I came back to America in 2011. So it'd be like June of 2016, I think, is when I started writing a blog. And before that, I was just doing it real primitive. I'd write a few philosophical essays, like Buddhist philosophy stuff, and then just have it like photocopied, and then just send out copies of it to people I thought might be interested.
Yeah, the internet's a lot more convenient with the website, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot more effective when you just put it out there and thousands of people can see it.
Yeah, same with your videos. Like you're reaching tens of thousands of people. Yeah, we did a lot of good work together in those videos too. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So, hey, we've been at it for 3 hours now, almost to the minute. How do you feel? Do you want to have to washroom break? Or are you about done for the day? How are you feeling?
Well, yeah, there's stuff I still have to do. Have to attend to the dogs and a few other things.
Yeah, you didn't show us any of your puppies tonight. Remember our last video we did, you're holding up one of the puppies. Are they bigger now?
Yeah, a little bit bigger, maybe.
Yeah, I guess, we should wrap it up. I really like to thank you for your time, 3 hours. And it's great question and answer because you and I have done hundreds of videos one-on-one or with Ajahn Punadamo. So it's great to have a group. I'd like to thank everyone for coming too, to throw different questions at you.
It's been fun. Thanks very much for having us all.
Yeah, it has been good.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay, Panabasa, be well, happy, peaceful, much metta. Till next time.
All right.